Good morning. You may have read in the weekly news email that we are beginning a series of sermons during the month of October that will focus our attention on stewardship. Members of the vestry have responded to a question about how God's grace has made a difference in their lives, and Tanya's response caught my attention because she reminded us of the story of Bartimaeus, the blind man, who asked the Lord to see. And I got to thinking, because yes, in the next 4 Sundays we're going to talk about stewardship, but that is not the focus of the readings today. Now, at this point, I am purposefully not looking back at Paula, because she's probably saying to herself, Lord, can this curate just preach like we said we were going to preach? Bear with me, though, because we cannot talk about our giving, about the management of what God has given us, without first talking about faith. And today's readings are all about faith. When Tanya calls our attention to Bartimaeus, she is reminding us, in fact, that faith is both the starting point and everything else in the context of stewardship. We must have vision in order to properly manage. A vision of who we are, a vision of whose we are, and a vision for what we can be. Bartimaeus, the blind man, that is the focus of Tanya's reflection, calls out to Jesus, Jesus, son of David. And Jesus replies, what do you want? And Bartimaeus says, I want to see. Jesus responds, go, your faith has made you well. Faith made him well. Faith gave him sight. Faith restored his vision. Paul reminds Timothy to rekindle the gift of faith that he received at the laying on of hands, the same gift that was present in his grandmother Lois and his mother Eunice. That very faith of his mother's, the faith of our mothers, was bestowed upon us too when we were baptized and when the bishop laid hands on us. This is not a special Bible faith. This is faith, the same faith that Paul wrote to Timothy about. Jesus reminds us today that faith is everything. Paul says it can literally move mountains. And the apostles in today's gospel, that's the first thing they cry out for: increase our faith. Jesus responds, if you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you could command the mulberry tree to grow in the sea. You've all seen mustard seeds. They're tiny. They're little itty bitty. More like pepper flakes than seeds. And yet they grow into a plant, at least in the Holy Land, that can be taller than a man. Jesus reminds us what faith does in our lives. Because we're not just servants, he goes on to say in the gospel, we are members of God's household. Faith means we have a place at the table. Faith means we are counted righteous, like Abraham. Faith, like Bartimaeus, means that we can finally see. And when we are transformed by faith, like Bartimaeus, we can go on, we can pick up our garment, and we can follow along the way. Stewardship is a tricky business. Let's be honest, we have bills to pay. There's a rent payment if we want to worship in this place. There's part of a light bill and salaries to pay if we're going to assemble every week and do the things that God is giving us to do. This is a practical effect of stewardship, but it's kind of a simple understanding of what it's about. And I'm going to leave the complicated parts to folks who are preaching in weeks 2, 3, and 4. You see how that works? Because what I want to talk about is a clouded vision a Bartimaeus before the healing. A simple understanding of stewardship is focused not on vision, not on seeing, but on survival. And this isn't what stewardship is. I propose that before we begin to make decisions about what God is calling us to do with our resources, we must first open our eyes to what is possible. If we perceive ourselves as unrelated to God's business, if we're merely employees in this magnificent firm of God and Son Unlimited, then all we need to do is show up for our assigned shift, punch the clock, and work until the horn sounds. Too often we probably enter these discussions about stewardship believing that we are only employees. Sometimes I think it's a misplaced modesty. Well, I'm just one voice in a choir of angels, or I don't have enough to make a difference. Sometimes there's a deep-seated sense of unbelonging. God is not really interested in me. This is blind thinking. This is Bartimaeus thinking before the encounter on the road. This is not who we are. Bartimaeus had just a little bit of faith after sitting at the gates for years. Just a little bit of faith. And he cried out. And they shushed him, and he cried out again. And by faith, his sight was restored. What happened next to the blind man? We don't know. The scriptures teach us that he received his sight and followed Jesus on the road. His faith transformed his life. We might assume that he followed Jesus to Jerusalem and witnessed the awesome events of those days. We don't know. We don't know what, but we know who. Bartimaeus got up and followed Jesus along the way. Now, for some, speculation like this, dare I say speculation about what we might give, our time, our talent, our treasure. Speculation makes us nervous. It's scary. How can we plan about what we don't know? For me, I share those feelings. And it's the most exciting thing in the world if you think about it. I don't know what God is going to do in this place. Will the mountain move? Will the mulberry tree pluck itself out and grow in the sea? Jesus says that even a little faith can do that. I don't know what God is going to do, but I know I get to be a part of it. The parable of the mustard seed was directed to the disciples, but I think you and I can profit from it. How blind sometimes do you feel? How different would your decisions be if that faith you have could move a mountain? Because, people of God, you are no mere slaves. You are members of God's household. So pick up the mustard seed and believe. Your eyes, like those of Bartimaeus, will be open for you to behold all that is possible with our God. Open your eyes. Get up. Follow Jesus along the way. Because the mountains will move, and the tree will grow, and the blind will see, and you will begin to gather up what has been scattered, so that it can be used to do all manner of miracles in this poor and tired world. On this people, Lord, pour out your grace. Open our eyes to what is possible in your name. Amen.